Hey parents, let's talk about something that probably drives you crazy on a daily basis. Your child complains constantly. They complain about their breakfast. They complain about their clothes. They complain about going to school. They complain about coming home from school. They complain when it's too hot, too cold, too loud, too quiet. Sometimes it feels like nothing you do can make them happy, and you might find yourself thinking, are they just trying to get attention? Are they just being difficult? Well, Donald Winnicott spent decades studying children's behavior, and he discovered something fascinating about complaining that completely changes how we should understand and respond to it. He found that when children complain constantly, they're not just being negative or attention-seeking. They're actually communicating something much deeper and more important about their emotional state and their relationship with you. Here's what Winnicott understood that most of us miss. Complaining is often a child's way of saying, I feel safe enough with you to share my real feelings, even the uncomfortable ones. Think about that for a moment. Your child saves their complaints for you, the person they trust most in the world. They might be angels at school, perfect little citizens in public, but the moment they get in the car with you, the complaints start flowing. This isn't because they're trying to make your life difficult. It's because you represent safety and unconditional love to them. They know, somewhere deep in their developing psyche, that you're the person who will still love them even when they're grumpy, dissatisfied, and hard to please. Winnicott called this phenomenon regression in the service of the ego. What he meant was that children sometimes need to go backward emotionally in order to move forward developmentally. When your child complains to you constantly, they're often regressing to an earlier stage where they felt completely free to express their authentic feelings without worrying about social expectations or other people's comfort. Let me give you an example that might help this make sense. Your 8-year-old has been at school all day, working hard to follow rules, be polite to teachers, navigate social dynamics with classmates, and manage their own big emotions in socially appropriate ways. This is exhausting work for a developing brain and nervous system. When they finally get home to you, their safe person, all of that suppressed tension and emotion needs somewhere to go. And often, it comes out as complaints. They complain that dinner doesn't taste right, that their homework is stupid, that their sibling is annoying. But what they're really saying is, I've been holding it together all day, and now I need to release all this built-up stress and frustration with someone who I know will still love me afterward. This is actually a sign of emotional intelligence, not immaturity. Your child is demonstrating that they understand the difference between safe relationships and other relationships. They know they can be their authentic self with you in ways they can't with teachers, friends, or other adults. Winnicott also discovered something else about complaining that's crucial for parents to understand. Sometimes children complain as a way of testing the relationship. They're unconsciously asking, are you strong enough to handle my negative emotions? Will you still love me if I'm not happy and grateful all the time? Can you stay calm and present with me even when I'm being difficult? This kind of testing is actually a normal and healthy part of child development. Children need to know that their primary attachments can withstand their full range of emotions, including the difficult ones. When we can stay patient and loving in the face of constant complaints, we're providing our children with something incredibly valuable: the experience of being loved and accepted, even when they're not at their best. Now, I know this can be really challenging for parents. When your child complains constantly, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy, frustration, or even anger. You might start to think, nothing I do is ever good enough, or why can't they just be grateful for what they have? These are natural reactions. But Winnicott would encourage us to look deeper. Often, children's complaints aren't really about the things they're complaining about. The breakfast isn't really too cold. The shirt isn't really too scratchy. The car ride isn't really too long. These complaints are often what psychologists call displacement. The child is taking feelings about something else and directing them towards safe targets. Maybe your child is feeling overwhelmed by social pressures at school, but they can't complain about that directly because it feels too vulnerable or they don't have the words for it. So instead, they complain about concrete, manageable things like food and clothing. These complaints become a way of expressing general feelings of discomfort or distress without having to identify or articulate the real source. Here's a story that really illustrates this beautifully. Winnicott worked with a family where the 6-year-old daughter complained constantly about everything. Her parents were at their wits' end because nothing seemed to make her happy. She complained about her meals, her clothes, her toys, her room. Everything was wrong according to this little girl. As Winnicott spent time with the family, he discovered something important. This little girl had recently become a big sister. And while she seemed to have adjusted well on the surface, she was actually struggling with a lot of complicated feelings about the new baby. She felt displaced, jealous, and confused about her role in the family, but she didn't have the emotional vocabulary to express these feelings directly. Instead, all of those uncomfortable emotions were coming out as complaints about everything else in her environment. She couldn't say, "I feel replaced by the baby, and I'm scared you don't love me as much anymore." But she could say, "This cereal tastes weird, and I don't like it." Once the parents understood what was really happening, they were able to respond differently. Instead of getting frustrated with the complaints, they started looking for the feelings underneath. They began having conversations about what it was like to be a big sister. They made special time for just her, and they acknowledged that having a new baby in the family was a big change for everyone. As the little girl felt more seen and understood. In her real struggles, the constant complaining gradually decreased. She didn't need to displace her feelings onto breakfast and clothing anymore because her actual feelings were being acknowledged and addressed. This brings up an important point about how to respond when your child complains constantly. Winnicott would encourage us to resist the urge to dismiss, minimize, or try to fix the complaints immediately. Instead, he would suggest that we try to listen for the feelings underneath and respond to those. This doesn't mean you have to agree with every complaint or change everything to make your child happy. It means acknowledging their emotional experience and helping them understand what they're really feeling. You might say something like, "I notice you've been feeling dissatisfied with a lot of things lately. I wonder if something is bothering you that's hard to put into words." Or, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated about a lot of things today." Sometimes when we complain about little things, it's because we have big feelings about something else. Winnicott also taught us something important about the timing of children's complaints. They often increase during periods of stress, transition, or developmental change. If your child suddenly starts complaining more than usual, it might be worth asking yourself what else is going on in their life that might be challenging for them. Are they starting a new school year? Has there been a change in the family dynamic? Are they going through a growth spurt or developmental leap that's making them feel unsettled? Sometimes children's complaints are their way of signaling that they need extra support and understanding. During difficult periods, another thing Winnicott observed about complaining is that it often reflects a child's developing sense of agency and autonomy. When very young children complain, they're sometimes practicing having opinions and preferences. They're learning that they're separate people with their own thoughts and feelings, and complaining can be a way of asserting that separateness. This can be particularly intense during the toddler years and again during adolescence. 2 periods when children are working hard to establish their individual identities. The complaints during these times aren't just about getting what they want. They're about exercising their right to have preferences and opinions. Even when those preferences seem unreasonable to adults. Understanding this can help us respond with more patience and less frustration. When your 3-year-old complains that their sandwich is cut wrong, they're not necessarily trying to make your life difficult. They're practicing being a person with preferences and learning that their opinions matter. Now, I want to address something that many parents worry about. They think that if they don't shut down complaining immediately, their child will become entitled or ungrateful. But Winnicott's research showed that children who feel heard and understood in their complaints actually become more resilient and emotionally mature over time. When we can listen to our children's complaints with curiosity rather than irritation, when we can help them identify the real feelings underneath, and when we can validate their emotional experiences while still maintaining appropriate boundaries, we're teaching them valuable skills for emotional regulation and communication. The goal isn't to eliminate complaining entirely. That would be unrealistic and might actually push your child to suppress important emotions. The goal is to help your child develop better ways of understanding and expressing their feelings so that they don't need to rely on complaints as their primary form of emotional communication. Here's something practical you can try when your child is in a complaining cycle. Instead of immediately trying to solve the complaints or getting frustrated, try reflecting back what you're hearing. You might say, "It sounds like you're having a really hard time today. Lots of things are bothering you." Often, just feeling heard and understood can help a child move through their difficult emotions more quickly. You can also help your child develop emotional vocabulary by naming feelings that might be underneath the complaints. "I wonder if you're feeling worried about something," or "It seems like you might be feeling overwhelmed today." When children learn to identify and name their emotions directly, they often need to use complaints less frequently. Winnicott also emphasized the importance of not taking children's complaints personally. When your child complains constantly, it's not a reflection of your parenting or an indication that you're not providing enough. It's often actually a sign that you are providing something very important, a safe relationship where your child feels free to express their authentic emotions. Remember, children who feel truly unsafe or unloved don't usually complain. They tend to withdraw, become overly compliant, or develop other protective behaviors. Complaining often indicates that a child feels secure enough in the relationship to risk being difficult or dissatisfied. Here's one more story that really drives this point home. There was a mother who was feeling overwhelmed by her 10-year-old son's constant complaints. He complained about everything: his food, his clothes, his chores, his teachers, his friends. She started to dread spending time with him because every interaction seemed to turn into a list of grievances. But then, she learned about Winnicott's perspective on complaining, and she decided to try a different approach. Instead of getting defensive or trying to fix everything, she started responding with curiosity and empathy. When he complained about his lunch, she might say, "That sounds really frustrating. Tell me more about what's bothering you." What she discovered was amazing. Once her son felt truly heard in his complaints, he often moved beyond them quickly and naturally. More importantly, as she listened with genuine interest instead of irritation, deeper conversations began to emerge. He started sharing real concerns about friendships, worries about school performance, and fears about growing up. The complaints had been the tip of the iceberg. Underneath were rich, complex emotional experiences that this 10-year-old was trying to communicate but didn't have the skills to express directly. By listening to the complaints with respect and curiosity, this mother gained access to her son's inner world in ways that transformed their relationship. The constant complaining didn't disappear overnight, but it became less frequent and less intense as her son developed better ways of communicating his real feelings and concerns. More importantly, their relationship became stronger because he learned that his mother was someone who could handle his difficult emotions and help him make sense of his experiences. So the next time your child launches into a litany of complaints, try to remember Winnicott's wisdom. This isn't just attention-seeking or negativity. This is your child trusting you enough to share their unfiltered emotional experience. This is them asking for your help in understanding and managing feelings that feel overwhelming to them. Your patience and understanding in these moments isn't just about getting through the day. It's about building your child's capacity for emotional intelligence, resilience, and healthy relationships throughout their life. When children learn early that their emotions are valid and that trusted adults can help them navigate difficult feelings, they develop the foundation for mental health and successful relationships that will serve them forever.